Good afternoon, everyone. Just wait a couple more minutes for other people to come in and then we'll get cracking. So, yeah, actually, while we're waiting, I'll just do a quick introduction. So, I'm James. I'm one of the co-founders of Hubstart, and I'm here with my fellow co-founder, Scott.
Good morning, or good evening,
Yeah,
so
or
I should
good night,
say.
whatever time of the world you're in. So, basically, this is our first meetup. We put this together so that we can showcase some of the ideas we have around HubSpot. We're a HubSpot solutions partner agency, so we work with a lot of different companies on how to set up their HubSpot, and we know a lot of the tricks of the trade, so to speak, and all the different quirks of the system and how you can find ways around those. Some things which maybe require a higher tier of HubSpot, but also ways to try and get the most out of what you have on the tier that you've purchased so far. So we just want to share some of those ideas and give people a chance to share their ideas as well about how they've done things in HubSpot around a certain topic, and also ask any questions about you guys' use cases that maybe myself or Scott or any other members of the team, also other members of the meetup group here might be able to talk about those as well and their ideas and their solutions. So I think that's probably everybody who's going to be coming in now. So I'll get straight into it from there. So the topic we're going to talk about today is tracking recurring revenue in HubSpot. So this is quite a common topic that comes up, particularly with clients that we have, because we work with a lot of B2B SaaS, for instance, and a lot of the world is moving now towards subscription products over like single purchase products. And with those, you obviously need to be able to track that revenue over a period of time and show how your monthly recurring revenue is showing within your sales presentations and your board presentations and so on. So we basically put together some of our ideas of how we've done that for different clients and also for our own business, as we offer retainers and other recurring products as well as an agency. And I'm going to be diving into some of those today and demoing them for you. So these are the different areas we're going to be covering. So we're going to start pretty much with the basics around like adding product line items to deals in a recurring format. We're also going to be looking at how that revenue, when you add recurring revenue line items, is tracked in the standard fields on a HubSpot deal, so that you can very easily report on those. How that gets factored in with deal probabilities that you add on to different stages of a pipeline, so that you can forecast not only recurring revenue, but also any type of revenue really that is coming down your pipeline. How you can then pull that from just a normal pipeline view into building some custom reports that show what your current MRR is and what your forecasted MRR is based on deals that you have in the pipeline at this moment. How you can, and indeed how you can report on that in an accumulated way so that you can sort of see your graph where your revenue is increasing, your MRR is increasing over time for those closed won deals as you start stacking on top of each other. And then also what you may want to do if you really want to take it to the next level with a HubSpot enterprise sales tier with their recurring revenue tracking product, which allows you to factor in things like churn and upsells and cross sells and things like that, and track those all in a separate stack, rather than just if someone churns, taking it out of a report as if that revenue never existed. Because that's really something that people get stuck with a little bit with HubSpot, especially when they get to these later stages. They'll be trying to track their recurring revenue, not just at that moment in time, but how that recurring revenue has changed over time as people have come and, of course, gone at some times as well. So without further ado, I'm going to just drop out of this presentation, and then I will take you over to one of our demo accounts where I'm going to show you a few of these different concepts. All right, so here is one of our test accounts. As you can see, I'm currently on a sample deal pipeline that we've created. And on this pipeline, we've created a few different products under deals that represent products that we as an agency would offer and another agency would typically offer, and put those across different stages. So first thing I'll do, I'll just create a new deal, and then we'll show you how we would add like recurring line items to that deal. So let's say that I was looking at doing a new sales and service retainer, and we're currently in the presentation stage for that. And then we'll create that as a deal. You saw when I was creating that deal, there's also a slot to immediately add line items, so you can sort of quick add line items to a deal. But typically what you do is as you go through the discovery phase and you discover what kind of products or subscriptions you're going to be selling, you would add those as line items onto your deal, which you do over here. So rather than just putting a single number up here for the deal amount, you'll actually list the products that you're selling as part of that deal. So on the starter tier, your basic only option is to create custom line items. But if you had a sheet of those, you obviously could just copy and paste those into here and do that as you go along. Then everybody who's on the pro tier of sales or higher can then add products from their product library. So you can get your product library into HubSpot from here, and you can sort of create your products, add your SKUs. And the important part here is the billing frequency. So you'd set the price of that product, and if it's a recurring revenue product, you'd set the frequency of billing for that product. And that can be anything from monthly up to billing every 3 years. You can also even set a standard term for that product as well. And if you've got a ton of products, you can also import those using a normal HubSpot import process from here. So I'm going to go with a monthly retainer because that's what I named the deal for. And we're going to have a monthly retainer with, say, a 4-month commitment. So I'm going to adjust that within the line item. So you see I've pulled in a product that's now become a line item, and I can now customize that for this specific deal. So if I set the term of this to the minimum term of subscription, which would be 4 months, and the billing frequency is monthly, and it's a £3,000 a month retainer. So I do that, and immediately you'll start seeing that various figures around the recurring revenue are filling themselves out along the top here. So we've got the monthly recurring revenue, we've got the annual revenue, and we've got the total contract value. If I had this as a 12-month term, then that total contract value would reflect that, because, and the annual recurring revenue as well, because it will be 3 times 12, because I'm capping it at a retainer of 4 months, then that's what it's showing. And you'll see when you're adding line items into here, it's then going to allow you to then update the deal amount to reflect the line items that you've added. Now, the way I've got it set up, because we're focused on recurring revenue, is so that the deal amounts that I see on the deal pipeline are all based on MRR. So if you look at these are all the MRR figures that are showing here. And that's something that you can customize as suits your business. So if you go into the settings and go into the deal settings, you'll see there's the default deal amount up here. So I've set that to monthly recurring revenue. Depending on your business preferences, you could have it set as the total contract value. So if you wanted to show the value of the contract over its entire term, including any one-off purchases, but also any MRR on that deal, then you could do that as total contract value. Or if you want to show pure MRR as we do, then you can have that as MRR. Indeed, that then means that if I decide to add a sort of a single project onto this, so let's say as well as our sales and service, we're going to do a onboarding for them, then I can add that as a product. Don't have that in here as a product, so I'll do that as a custom. So let's say a Sales Hub onboarding, and then I'll add that in as a one-time with a one-time billing frequency. And you'll see, because that's a one-time product, when I went to save that, it's not prompting me to update my MRR because this isn't MRR. If that was MRR and I had this as like, not that onboarding would be monthly, but if that was monthly, it's then going to prompt me to change the deal amount to count the total MRR across all recurring products. So if I go through to the deal, you see those items I had over here on the line items. I've also pulled those into the sidebar here so I can easily access them. These are all standard calculated properties in HubSpot for the same things: total contract value, annual contract value, ARR and MRR, which you can then pull into any reports that you're then going on to build. If I then look at the deal pipeline, looking at deal probability, you'll see that there's some weightings down here. So what we've basically done is looked at our sales process and said that a deal that has reached this stage or this stage or this stage has a certain percentage chance of closing. So if I use that in combination with the MRR values for the deals, I can sort of say, well, for in my current presentation scheduled stage where I think something's going to have a 60% chance of closing, I've got 3,000 worth of potential MRR, and I weight that just by 60%. So that's sort of a forecast of £1,800 of MRR being added based on the deals that are currently in this stage. And obviously everyone's sales process is different. So these stages, I'm sure if you're using HubSpot sales pipeline, these stages are going to vary depending on what your business is, what your sales model is. And then for each of the stages you do have in your sales process, you can set a deal probability. So you'll see that I've gone through to the deal board set up from these board actions. Here I can, of course, customize my deal stages, but I can also set deal probabilities for each of these stages, which will then be pulled into any kind of forecasting that I decide to do off the back of that. So from there, let's then get into some of the custom reporting that we're building around this. So I've done here a custom MRR report that basically looks at what's currently in my pipeline and shows that within this consolidated way. So you'll see here that I have deal stage weighted amount that I'm using to represent the MRR that I'm showing here. And the reason for that is simply because I don't want to just show how much my MRR is building month by month, but I also want to show my predicted MRR for future months. So when we see here that we're predicting our MRR is going to jump to £12,150 by July, that's based on the fact that in the deal pipeline here, I've got a couple of deals that are closing or going to potentially close right at the end of this month. And based on their weighted deal stage amounts for MRR, that is then showing as a potential uplift. So when it comes to these deals closing, because then it will be working on the 100%, the 6K total between those, then it would be more of a jump. It wouldn't be 9K to 12K, it would be 9K to 15K if we manage to close both of them. But because we're looking at a 60% and a 20%, that is showing the forecasted weighting based on the stages of the pipeline they're at this moment in time. You'll also see that I've got a goal line here. So within HubSpot, you can set up revenue goals on Sales Pro or higher. So if I go over to the forecasting tool here, you'll see that I've set up revenue goals for myself month on month. And you can see that I've got this amount of revenue of MRR that I've managed to close so far. And you also look at my pipeline value. And if I want, I can then set revenue goals for myself by going up here. And you'll see that I have set revenue goals of adding an additional £1,000 a month of MRR month by month on top of the baseline that I've already got. So whereas if you're selling one-off products, you might say we want to sell £5,000 worth of products each month, and you'd set your targets sort of like as that. I'm saying I want to add an additional grand to our MRR for every month by selling £1,000 worth of additional MRR, but while also keeping and retaining the MRR customers that I already have. And then from here, I can see how well I'm tracking against those goals. And when it shows back on the report, you'll be able to see on this line here how well I'm tracking against that. So like for here, I started my goals at the beginning of March. If it's 1,000 a month, I expect to be on 1,000 by April, 2,000 by May, and then 3,000 by June. But it bases it on the days as well. So you'll see that we're on the 22nd of June as of the time of recording. And based on that, the proportion of that 3,000 to 2,000 jump is like 2,700. So this line will track up as your deals close throughout the month. So you can see how well you're doing in terms of how close you are to reaching your target and how on track you are towards that target. So like if I had only closed £300 of MRR and I'm more than halfway through the month, you'd expect me to put on 500 if my budget's 1,000 by that point. So that will show me that based on how far in the month I've got so far, am I tracking against the total target for the whole month? So let's have a look into this report and just see how I built this, because I'm sure a lot of you are trying to piece together how we put this together. So this is just a deal report. I created this as a single object report. So to do that, you would go over to the reports page, or if you've already got a dashboard, you can create that just straight up from here. And I'd create it as a single object report. And that would be in most cases sufficient for a revenue chart like this. So let's go back into the one I did earlier. And you'll see I'm pulling in a few different data points here. So I'm pulling in I was pulling in the MRR, which I don't really need for this chart, but I was pulling it in anyway just to do some tests. But I'm also pulling in the close date and the deal stage weighted amount. And as we know, we've set our deals amounts to be MRR. So deal stage amount would be the same as MRR, and deal stage weighted amount would be the MRR based on the weighting of the deal stages that the deals are in at that moment in time. So if I go and add deal stage into here, you'll see that for these closed won deals, the weighted amount matches the MRR. But for deals that open, it's a weighted amount based on the 20% stage here and the 60% stage here. So that sometimes can be useful to look at when you're sort of drilling into one of these. I've then basically done a line chart based on the close date and broken it and measuring that by the total weighted amount so far. So I'm looking at the not average of the deals, but the total value of all of the deals that have closed month by month, or rather all the deals that are open month by month in that particular close date or close month. And crucially to that, I've also gone into display options up here, and I've selected cumulative, which is really important for MRR, because that is going to then, rather than just showing you how much MRR you've closed each month and the chart's going to go up and down depending on the closed amounts, it's going to show that continuous line of growing MRR month by month. I've also put in the today line so that we can see the forecast into the future, because I'm not filtering out any deals from this base that have not closed yet. And I've also put in the revenue goals, which means that it's going to look at the revenue goals I've added here, and it's going to pull that into this report. The revenue goals you can set by user, or you can have global revenue goals. So if you've got sort of revenue goals for the whole team, and you want to show the whole team in this report, it will show a revenue goal based on sort of the team's accumulated goals. But if I wanted to just have this report for me, as I've done, then it'll be using my own revenue goals, and I'll be just looking at the deals that I own to make sure that that is an accurate goal against accurate revenue raised. So from all of that, we then end up with our chart, which then shows us that revenue against my personal goals and what that's looking like in terms of forecast for the future. So that is all well and good in most situations. The only sort of situations where that is not helpful are the ones I mentioned earlier around churn, and so to a lesser extent also upsell and cross-sell. So upsell and cross-sell we can sort of get around, because if you have an upsell you'd create a new deal for that upsell, you put that as new revenue. And when that deal closes, then that will add to the revenue that you then have showing in this graph, in this chart. And because the close dates of these deals are taken into account when deciding where it's going to plot that revenue within your overall timeline, then those upsells will appear at the time when you made that upsell. However, it won't really show you for this continuously growing revenue how much of that was upsell, how much of that was new business. So there is a limitation there, but it will still at least show the revenue. The point where it gets really problematic is if people churn. So if somebody churns, then you might have them then going from close won to close lost, or you might have them going from a won stage into a lost stage called churn, and keep your close lost for the deals that you never won. And that's what a lot of our clients have on the pro tier have ended up doing. But the problem is that if we aren't taking into account deals in that churn as revenue, which we wouldn't because it's no longer revenue, then that deal is then going to drop off this report altogether. So this deal closed on the 1st of March. That is then contributing to my MRR from March all the way up to the current point where I've got my 9,150. However, if I move that deal into churn, then not only is it going to correctly reduce my so MRR from 9,150 to 6,150, which would be a big loss, but it would be accurate. But it's also going to reduce everything that preceded it. So it's going to think that I never had that revenue, and in March I had nothing, even though for March, April, and May, that 3K was contributing towards that MRR by quite a sizable amount. And that obviously is quite a big problem. So HubSpot have a feature within their sales enterprise reporting called recurring revenue tracking. And that is how we basically take that into account. So if you go over here into reports and analytics tools, and then we go through to revenue analytics, you will see what this actually looks like. So this is the revenue analytics report, and it is showing actual revenue won or lost by month for all deals that ever were won, as well as potential revenue coming down the pipeline for future months based on what's in the pipeline at this time. So if I go and have a look at one of these deals, let's say, you'll see that there's some recurring revenue properties in here. So we've got the recurring revenue amount, which you can use a simple workflow to just pull that from the deal amount when the deal closes. So that would literally just be something like, let's just create this on the fly. When a deal, with a deal workflow here, when that deal becomes in the deal stage closed won, we will then copy the final revenue amount for that deal from the deal amount. Why is that not working for me now? There we go. Into the recurring revenue amount field. And then we'll just have that happen for every deal. You then got down here classifications for the recurring revenue deal type. So rather than just having your new and existing business for the deal, you can say whether this is a completely new sale for the first ever retainer, let's say for this customer, or it's an upgrade, or it's a downgrade, or it's a renewal. So then based on those, you can then classify what those different types of recurring revenue are within your revenue analytics report. And you'll see here that I've got the new revenue that's being closed each month, but I'm also keeping here the existing revenue from previous closes where that deal is still open. But with this particular one here, I've said that this retainer churned at the end of May. So then when I look at May, I can see I'm losing 3,000. That's then taking myself down. I'm also gaining another 1,500 from a new deal for 1.5K that closed in that same month, which I believe was that one there. Yep, 18th of May. And then for future months, it'll then continually add as you get new deals as it goes through. And you can drill into these and see like what those deals are just by clicking down onto those and open them up, so you can see which deals are moving in different months and track why those were happening. So that pretty much covers everything I've got to show. So that basically covers all the different scenarios of how we can track recurring revenue within HubSpot. So with that going from there, has there been any questions we've had so far?
And this can be just the, can this be done by the salesperson as well? By individual salespeople?
As in
Tracking the
like
revenue by
accessing this?
sales,
Okay,
by
yeah.
sales reps.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. So yes, it can be. Like, even though I chose to automate it in this case, like this could be updated by any team member unless you, of course, decide to lock down those fields to particular people. So it's in some case, I guess that would be by sales, of course, in the front end when you're sort of putting in your new business, your upgrade or your downgrade. But when it comes to sort of revenue becoming inactive, you just say a downgrade or a churn, then that's something that perhaps the customer success team could update or the accounts team could update. But either way, whoever you have access to this, they can add these values at the appropriate time and they'll reflect straight away within the reports.
Right. So for the recurring revenue chart, can we view this by sales rep?
I see what you mean. No, I don't believe we can do it by sales rep. We can do it by pipeline. So if you've got different sales processes, then you can look at for different products, let's say different recurring revenue products, then you can look at it by individual pipeline. And you can also sort of change the range of time you want to look at. So if you want to look at the whole history of your company, you can do that. And if you want to look at sort of how you're going against revenue by week or by day, that's also an option, although that could get a little bit busy depending on what range of time you're looking over. Anything else that's come through?
Yes. Is there ability to add additional items to the downgrade upgrade?
Additional items, as in like additional fields, additional detail, sort of?
Additional fields?
No, there isn't, unfortunately. As we can see, the recurring revenue is in beta at the moment, and it's basically limited to just these data points. Like, we can track the reasons, we can track when it happened, we can track the value of the MRR to reflect in the chart, but we can't sort of go into anything further from that. We can't actually customize these reasons yet either at the moment, which I know is something that people are probably going to want to have in the future. So if you wanted to track things like what the products would be that are being sold, then you could do that obviously within the line items. But if you wanted to track sort of MRR product by product, you'd probably want to then have different sales pipelines for each of your products so that you could track the MRR for that product separately.
Good. If there's a price change, would you change that on the product line item, or do you just create a new product line item?
So if there's a price change, that would probably go as a upgrade or a downgrade. So I'd probably have it where I would end this particular deal with a reason of downgrade, and then I would create a new deal with the new product, with the product at the new price, we should also have a deal type of downgrade. That's why we have downgrade in both of these, because that way you're sort of ending the current product on the current price, and if you're sort of scaling back the retainer on a certain date, and then that new product then takes over and shows the downgraded revenue amount within the revenue analytics chart, and then that will color code itself based on that as well.
Cool. And the last question I have here is with the product library, if the price changes in the product library, are they automatically reflected in all deals?
No, they're not. That's for a good reason. Like, obviously, if you sell a product at a certain price and then you change the price of that product later, then that you don't want to be updating historical data as a side effect of that. So when you add a product to a deal, it basically uses that product as a template for the line item, which you can then customize within that deal on that line item. It's nothing more than a template.
Excellent.
All right. So if there's no last questions from anybody, then we will probably go ahead and wrap this up. So thanks everyone for participating. I really appreciate all of the good questions there. And if you want to discuss this further, then just drop myself a line. That's james@hubstart.io, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. And likewise, if you want any help with building out your own sort of sales pipeline within HubSpot with recurring revenue, then we can definitely help you to do that. So yeah, drop me a line. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, James.
Bye-bye.